called Change Your Diet, Change Your Numbers. So it's all about those, the blood pressure and cholesterol and triglycerides and all of those things, what they mean, and then how you can change them. So we'll go over blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar. These are all symptoms that something's not going right within you. We don't take them seriously sometimes because we think everybody has high blood pressure, everybody has high triglycerides, but something's not right. So what does that mean? And then we'll individualize your healthy plate. So that's what's in front of you. You'll actually put the foods that you like on there, and you'll know how to eat them and what proportions. My goal for you is to be thinking about what of this applies to you, and make a goal. Maybe you want to watch your blood pressure and make sure it doesn't get any higher. So you want to pick one or two things to practice and work on to make sure it doesn't get any worse. Okay, so with blood pressure, optimal blood pressure is 120/80. That's like perfect. Now, there's some conditions and some age groups that we're starting to realize we don't have to be that stringent. As you get older, they're saying you don't have to be right at 120/80, but for everybody in this room, 120/80 is best. And then prehypertensive is when you start creeping up over that. So like you were saying, anywhere between 120 and 139 and 80 and 89. If say your bottom number's great, but your top number's high, it's still prehypertension, wherever the highest number lies. Hypertension, 140/90. And then hypertension 2 is 160/100. Hypertension number 2 is when we start to really freak out. Hypertension number 1 is when they'll usually put you on some kind of medication. But prehypertension is really when we want to make some lifestyle changes so that we don't have to get on anything more serious.
So I'm already on medication.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, and you medication is great. You don't want to get off of it. These are just more lifestyle changes that you can make. So some of the causes for high blood pressure, tobacco use, excess weight, lack of exercise, excessive alcohol consumption, stress, older age, genetics, family history, thyroid disorders. Okay, get used to these because you're going to see a theme across all these symptoms. When you start to develop dysfunction, it's these same things that will throw things off. And you can probably think of a few that you're like, okay, well, I've got that one. So it can be a cumulative effect. And the reason we worry about blood pressure, and we're in the perfect situation for this analogy, is if you think about a pipe, if you put too much water, too much anything through a pipe, it's going to stress the sides of that pipe, and you might start getting leaks. You have to patch it up and repair it. It's just not good for the pipe. Same for your arteries. When the blood is going through those arteries too hard, it's pressing against those walls too hard, it starts to damage them. And then your body has to go behind and patch it up, and that's where you get the plaque buildup. That's where you start to get the hardening of the arteries, and they start to get narrow and narrower, and that's where heart disease comes in. So blood pressure kind of starts that whole process. So you start to get heart abnormalities. Can anybody guess why the brain, kidneys, and eyes would be affected by high blood pressure? And what about them? They're really small. Those three places have the smallest blood vessels in your body, and they can't handle the high blood pressure. So you start to see damage in those three places. And then sleep disturbances. Has anybody heard of sleep apnea? Yeah? And you have to wear the mask, the CPAP machine. Oh, you decided to show up. So with sleep apnea, high blood pressure has been shown to not only cause sleep apnea, but then when you have it, it worsens your blood pressure. So it's kind of this cycle. But by fixing your blood pressure, you can improve your sleep apnea if that's something that you have or are at risk for. Sleep apnea, if you don't know what it is, it's when you wake up in the middle of the night because you actually stop breathing. Your body stops getting oxygen to your brain, so it wakes you up. So you're not getting continuous sleep throughout the night. Doesn't make you feel very good. Okay, any questions on blood pressure? We're going to move on to cholesterol. Okay, cholesterol, total cholesterol is what they measure at the doctor, and they call it your cholesterol, and this is the one that they want under 200. Everybody heard of this one? Will you shut that door, Natalie? It's really loud. And if it goes over 200, they call it hypercholesterolemia, or you have high cholesterol, and they might put you on a medicine. The problem is a lot of times they'll drive it too far down. Notice that you want your cholesterol to be between 160 and 200. And that's because cholesterol has an important function in the body. It functions as a Band-Aid. So when your cholesterol is high, what that really tells us is your body is making lots of Band-Aids to patch up any damage or inflammation that's going on. So if we then fix the damage or the inflammation, then we can lower the cholesterol naturally. So it acts like a Band-Aid. It's a part of cell membranes and structure, so it's a building block. And it also helps build vitamin D and your sex hormones like testosterone. So if your cholesterol gets below 160, your body doesn't have enough cholesterol to make testosterone. And a lot of men over the age of 30 have low testosterone, so that's another factor that can play into that. So you don't want to drive cholesterol just into the ground. You want it to be between 160 and 200. But total cholesterol doesn't really tell us a lot. You really want to look at the factors that are underneath cholesterol. So total cholesterol is like an umbrella. And underneath total cholesterol are your LDL and your HDL. Has anybody heard of these? So the good and the bad cholesterol. So that's really what you want to pay attention to rather than total cholesterol. Okay, so the HDL cholesterol, this is your happy cholesterol. This is the one you want as high as possible. So you at least want it over 40, if not higher. For a man, over 40, we're doing really good, but if we can get it higher, that's great. This cholesterol particle actually takes cholesterol out of the body. So when it's there to be used as plaque or Band-Aids, it'll actually take it out of the body and to be excreted. So this is why it's good. It's a cleanup crew, okay? We need these. The reason HDL might be low is for tobacco use, excess weight, lack of exercise, and unhealthy fats in the diet. To raise this number, you have to put all parts together. You have to have a good diet, you have to be exercising, you have to manage your stress, sleep well, you have to do it all right for it to start to come up. The other particle is your LDL. And ideally, we'd like this one to be under 100. This is the one that brings the cholesterol in. So LDL brings it in, HDL takes it out. So we don't want too many little particles bringing cholesterol in. So under 100, depends on your history and risk factors. Sometimes we'll give you a little more wiggle room there. But basically it brings cholesterol, triglycerides, vitamins, and antioxidants into the blood vessel. But here's where it gets really complicated, is that the size of these LDL particles really matters the most. So if I have a big pile of sand and I need you to take it from here to Coleman, would you rather use child sand shovels or big dump trucks? Dump trucks, right? It's not going to take as long. They can carry more. It's the same with your LDL. You want those LDL particles to be large and fluffy rather than small and dense. The smaller they are, the more damage they do on your arteries, okay? The larger and fluffier they are, the nicer they are. So two people could have the same LDL number. One could have the large particles, one small, and the small particles is actually higher heart disease risk. So really, it's just about diving deeper and looking deeper into those lab values. And that panel, it's called an NMR panel. If you're interested in those numbers, you can ask your doctor about it. It's not the typical panel that's run. Your doctor typically just runs a very basic cholesterol panel, and you can get them to look a little bit deeper into that. But some of the causes of those small, dense particles are insulin resistance, meaning your body's not processing blood sugar correctly, metabolic syndrome, thyroid dysfunction, infection, inflammation, and genetics. So there are some lifestyle things we can do to change those particles from small to large. So you do have control over that. Any questions about that? That one gets a little complicated. Okay, glucose. What is glucose? So it's blood sugar. And what do you eat to get glucose? Yeah, carbohydrates, starches, breads, pastas, grains, Even fruit has carbohydrates and or sugar in it. But glucose is energy for our cells. So this is what we need for our cells to make energy and do their job. Optimally, we'd want, if you haven't had anything to eat and you had it tested, we'd want it to be between 70 and 100. Okay, that's kind of the ideal range. If you're not fasting, anywhere between 100 and 140. Okay, you don't have to memorize these things, but does anybody know what hemoglobin A1C is? Anybody have diabetes? Okay, so this number actually gives us a 3-month average of what your blood sugar does. So you could go into the doctor and he says, how's your blood sugar? And you say, it is fantastic. I'm doing so good. He pulls your hemoglobin A1C and he goes, like I know what you've been doing. I can tell your blood sugar's been high or what it's been doing. So ideally you want your hemoglobin A1C under 6. This is typically drawn for someone with diabetes because the doctor wants to see what their blood sugar's been doing over a 3-month average. So like I was saying, it's energy for all cells in the body. Now the problem is, or not the problem, but glucose needs insulin to get inside the cell. So everybody's heard of insulin, right? Glucose and insulin, those are, people with diabetes, you hear those terms. Think of a garage door. When you pull up to your garage door in your car, you have to push the button for the door to open, right? Think of that button like insulin. So glucose pulls up to the cell, insulin has to push the button for the glucose to be able to get inside. But the cell has to listen to the insulin. And what happens is, for a whole lots of reasons, the cell stops listening. So insulin's there, it's pushing the button, and nothing's happening. And that's called insulin resistance. Your cell is resisting the insulin, and the glucose can't get inside. And instead, the glucose stays in your blood vessel, and it's almost like sandpaper. It's really irritating. Well, when we have damage, what fixes the damage? What's a Band-Aid? Cholesterol. So that's why if your blood sugar is high, your cholesterol will usually go up too, because your body is making those Band-Aids to try to fix the damage. Okay, so it all kind of goes hand in hand. Some of the causes of high blood sugar or high glucose are insulin resistance, excess carbohydrate intake, stress, poor sleep, genetics, and excess weight. So you've heard all those factors before. Okay, one more factor, triglycerides. You're talking about this one. So normal triglycerides are under 150. When you start going above that, then we start seeing some dysfunction. But what a triglyceride is when that glucose is in the blood and your cell takes it in, it says, okay, do I need to use this for energy now or do I need to store it for energy later? Well, we don't move as much as we should sometimes, and so we say, okay, I'll store this for later, and it stores it as body fat. And when it wants to do that, it turns it into a triglyceride. So a triglyceride is like a fat that floats around in your blood. Okay? It sometimes gives us an idea of how quickly you're storing body fat. But there are some other reasons why you might have high triglycerides. It could be excess weight, a high carbohydrate diet, unhealthy fats, lack of exercise, alcohol intake, medications, and genetics. So again, a lot of the same factors that might be causing other dysfunction. But the one that we're going to focus on today is diet. So we'll get to that in just a few slides. Okay, so when you have these symptoms going on, when you hear symptom, usually you think a fever, a cough, a runny nose. Those are the symptoms we think of. But when your blood pressure starts getting out of whack or your cholesterol, these are symptoms too. Something's not going on right on the inside. So if you think about it, like if you had a yard full of weeds and you wanted to get rid of them, how would you do it? So you would do something to kill them, right? Okay, what else could you do? The old-fashioned way that might hurt your back. Pull them. But you got to get to the root. No matter if it's chemically or manually, you get to the root of it. But what if I were to just come by with some shears and just cut all the tops off to make it look better? Is that going to do anything for me? No, because they're still there. They're going to grow back. And that's what happens sometimes when we ignore the symptoms and we just try to mask them. So we just try to take a medication for each one of our symptoms. It's kind of like painting the leaves green on a dead tree. It makes it look better, but it's not really fixing anything, and on the inside, the tree is still dead. So diet and lifestyle changes are the most powerful way to really fix the dysfunction and fix what's going on the inside. I'm not saying medication isn't important. You still want to take your medication, but you can do some real changes with diet and lifestyle changes. So like I said, we're going to get into the diet part. Good news is, if you're sitting here thinking, man, I have all those. I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides. I have so much work to do. The same diet pattern that I'm going to go over will improve all of them. So you don't have to do a bunch of different little things. You just do one, really. And summing it up, it's plenty of non-starchy vegetables, generous amount of protein, healthy fats, and controlling your carbohydrates. So that plate in front of you, we're going to actually go through and talk about each one of those things. But the whole theme here is go back to trusting the farmer and not the scientist. Okay? Over the past 30 to 40 years, we've tried to get the scientists in the lab to create the perfect food that won't, hurt our health, but really it's about going back to those natural things. Okay, everybody got your pencils ready? Non-starchy vegetables are first. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through this list and write down the ones that you like. Okay? If you don't like many of them, I want you to put 2 on there that you're willing to try. So this would include artichoke, asparagus, avocado. Avocado, you'll see that one again. It's actually a healthy fat too. Beets, bell pepper, broccoli. Anybody like Brussels sprouts? Me too. Cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, celery, cucumbers, eggplant. Garlic and ginger help to season the foods, but they're also non-starchy vegetables. Green onion, lettuce or salad,